The Stanford Prison Experiment, conducted in 1971 by psychologist Philip Zimbardo, remains one of the most controversial and illuminating studies in the history of psychology. It was designed to explore the psychological effects of perceived power, focusing on the struggle between prisoners and guards. The experiment took place in the basement of Stanford University Psychology Building, where a mock prison was constructed. 24 male students, selected for their psychological stability, were randomly assigned to play the roles of either prisoners or guards. What began as a 2-week simulation was abruptly terminated after just 6 days due to the extreme and unexpected behaviors that emerged. The guards, who were given no specific instructions on how to behave, quickly adopted authoritarian and abusive tactics to assert control over the prisoners. The prisoners, on the other hand, began to exhibit signs of severe emotional distress and rebellion. The transformation of ordinary college students into cruel guards and broken prisoners shocked the researchers and raised profound ethical questions about the nature of power and human behavior. The experiment revealed how quickly individuals can adapt to their assigned roles, especially when those roles are reinforced by a system of authority. The guards, armed with uniforms, batons, and mirrored sunglasses to dehumanize themselves, began to exert their power in increasingly harsh ways. They subjected the prisoners to psychological torture, including sleep deprivation, humiliation, and forced exercises. The prisoners, stripped of their individuality and given numbered smocks to wear, began to internalize their submissive roles. Some even developed symptoms of acute psychological trauma, such as uncontrollable crying and extreme anxiety. The line between reality and role-playing blurred as the participants became fully immersed in their assigned identities. The guards, who had no prior history of violent or abusive behavior, began to derive pleasure from the suffering of the prisoners. This shift in behavior demonstrated how situational forces can override personal morals and lead ordinary people to commit acts of cruelty. One of the most disturbing aspects of the experiment was the speed at which the guards embraced their roles as oppressors. Within hours of the simulation's start, the guards began to assert their dominance, using verbal abuse and psychological manipulation to control the prisoners. They enforced arbitrary rules and punished even minor infractions with severe consequences. The prisoners, who initially resisted the guards' authority, soon became passive and compliant. The power dynamic between the two groups became increasingly unbalanced, with the guards growing more tyrannical and the prisoners more submissive. This rapid transformation highlighted the fragility of human morality and the ease with which individuals can be corrupted by power. The experiment also underscored the importance of accountability and oversight in systems of authority, as the absence of these factors allowed the guards to act with impunity. The psychological toll on the prisoners was profound and immediate. Many of them experienced intense feelings of helplessness and despair, as they were stripped of their autonomy and subjected to constant surveillance. The guards' tactics of humiliation and degradation were designed to break the prisoners' spirits and reinforce their dependence on the system. Some prisoners began to exhibit signs of Stockholm Syndrome, identifying with their captors and defending their actions. Others rebelled against the guards' authority, only to be met with increasingly harsh punishments. The experiment revealed how quickly individuals can be dehumanized in a system that prioritizes control over compassion. The prisoners' suffering was not just physical but also emotional, as they were forced to confront the loss of their dignity and sense of self. The guards, too, were affected by the experiment, albeit in different ways. While they did not experience the same level of psychological distress as the prisoners, they underwent a transformation of their own. The power they wielded over the prisoners corrupted their sense of morality, leading them to commit acts of cruelty that they would have previously found unthinkable. Some guards later admitted to feeling a sense of exhilaration from their newfound authority, while others struggled with guilt and shame over their actions. The experiment demonstrated how easily individuals can be seduced by power and how difficult it can be to resist the temptation to abuse it. The guards' behavior also highlighted the role of group dynamics in shaping individual actions, as they often encouraged one another to escalate their abuse of the prisoners. The ethical implications of the Stanford Prison Experiment have been the subject of intense debate. Critics argue that the study caused unnecessary harm to the participants and failed to provide adequate safeguards to protect their well-being. The psychological trauma experienced by the prisoners, some of whom required counseling after the experiment, raised serious questions about the ethics of conducting such research. Zimbardo himself has acknowledged the ethical shortcomings of the study, admitting that he became too immersed in his role as the prison's superintendent and failed to intervene when the situation spiraled out of control. The experiment has since become a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked authority and the need for ethical oversight in psychological research. Despite its ethical controversies, the Stanford Prison Experiment has had a lasting impact on our understanding of human behavior. It has been cited in discussions about the abuse of power in real-world institutions, such as prisons, military organizations, and even corporations. The study's findings have been used to explain how ordinary people can become complicit in systems of oppression and how situational factors can override individual morality. The experiment has also influenced the development of ethical guidelines for psychological research, emphasizing the importance of informed consent, debriefing, and the protection of participants' mental and physical health. While the study's methods may be questionable, its insights into the nature of power and authority remain relevant. The experiment also shed light on the concept of de-individuation, a psychological state in which individuals lose their sense of self-awareness and personal responsibility. The guards' uniforms and mirrored sunglasses served to anonymize them, making it easier for them to act in ways that were inconsistent with their normal behavior. This loss of individuality allowed the guards to distance themselves from the consequences of their actions and to justify their abuse of the prisoners. The prisoners, too, experienced a form of de-individuation, as they were stripped of their names and forced to wear identical smocks. This process of dehumanization made it easier for the guards to view the prisoners as less than human and to treat them with cruelty. The Stanford Prison Experiment also highlighted the role of conformity in shaping behavior. The guards' actions were influenced not only by their own desires for power but also by the expectations of their peers and the broader system in which they operated. The guards who were more aggressive in their treatment of the prisoners often set the tone for the group, encouraging others to follow suit. Similarly, the prisoners' passivity and compliance were reinforced by the actions of their fellow inmates, who were also struggling to cope with the oppressive environment. The experiment demonstrated how group dynamics can amplify individual behaviors, leading to a collective descent into cruelty and submission. The study's findings have been applied to real-world situations, such as the abuse of prisoners at Abu Ghraib, where American soldiers subjected Iraqi detainees to torture and humiliation. The parallels between the Stanford Prison Experiment and the events at Abu Ghraib are striking, as both cases involved ordinary individuals who were placed in positions of power and given the opportunity to abuse others. The soldiers at Abu Ghraib, like the guards in the Stanford Experiment, were influenced by situational factors that encouraged them to act in ways that were inconsistent with their normal behavior. The Stanford Prison Experiment serves as a reminder of the potential for abuse in any system of authority and the need for vigilance in preventing such abuses. The experiment also raised important questions about the nature of free will and personal responsibility. The guards' actions were clearly influenced by the situational forces at play, but does this mean they were not responsible for their behavior? The prisoners, too, were shaped by their environment, but does this absolve them of their complicity in the system? These questions have no easy answers, but they force us to confront the complex interplay between individual agency and external influences. The Stanford Prison Experiment challenges us to consider the extent to which our behavior is shaped by the roles we are assigned and the systems in which we operate. One of the most troubling aspects of the experiment was the way in which the participants internalized their roles. The guards, who were initially hesitant to exert their authority, quickly became comfortable with their positions of power. They began to see themselves as enforcers of order and the prisoners as threats to that order. This shift in perception allowed them to justify their abusive behavior as necessary for maintaining control. The prisoners, on the other hand, began to see themselves as powerless and submissive, accepting their mistreatment as inevitable. This internalization of roles demonstrates how deeply situational factors can influence our sense of identity and our behavior. The experiment also revealed the importance of leadership in shaping group behavior. Zimbardo, in his role as the prison superintendent, played a key role in creating the environment that allowed the guards to abuse their power. His failure to intervene when the situation became abusive sent a clear message to the guards that their behavior was acceptable. This lack of oversight and accountability allowed the guards to escalate their abuse without fear of consequences. The experiment serves as a reminder of the critical role that leaders play in setting the tone for group behavior and the need for leaders to act with integrity and responsibility. The Stanford Prison Experiment has been criticized for its lack of scientific rigor and its reliance on anecdotal evidence. The small sample size, the lack of a control group, and the subjective nature of the observations have all been cited as limitations of the study. Critics argue that the experiment's findings cannot be generalized to broader populations and that its conclusions are based on flawed methodology. Despite these criticisms, the study remains a powerful and influential exploration of the darker aspects of human behavior. Its insights into the nature of power, authority, and conformity continue to resonate with researchers and the public alike. The experiment also highlighted the importance of empathy in preventing abuse. The guards' ability to dehumanize the prisoners was a key factor in their willingness to inflict harm. By stripping the prisoners of their individuality and treating them as objects rather than people, the guards were able to distance themselves from the consequences of their actions. This process of dehumanization is a common feature of abusive systems, from prisons to war zones. The Stanford Prison Experiment serves as a reminder of the need to cultivate empathy and compassion in order to prevent such abuses from occurring. The study's findings have been used to inform policies and practices in a variety of fields, including criminal justice, education, and organizational management. The experiment's insights into the dangers of unchecked authority and the importance of accountability have influenced the development of ethical guidelines and oversight mechanisms in these areas. For example, many prisons have implemented reforms to reduce the risk of abuse by